What's up, everybody? Good afternoon. And I know this is kind of old news at this point, but it's still worth going over. It's not like this stuff is going anywhere, so I don't feel the need to immediately jump on this stuff when it comes out. The contract numbers for players that we signed last week or even 2 weeks ago. But it is worth discussing because it helps paint the picture of where this team is going and what this team is doing, and kind of gives us an idea of what might be coming down the pipe. So we got this was yesterday actually, so it's been over 24 hours now that we've had this. But yesterday we did get contract details on Jerome Baker and George Fant. Got the tweet here from Dugar where he breaks it down. He's got the screenshots from, I think this is over the cap. And good news on both fronts. It's less than I was expecting. So the first one, this is Jerome Baker. We were told it was 1 year, 7 million. As it turns out, it's actually more like 1 year, 6.8 million. The actual cap number is $6.77 million. So couple 100,000 saved. It's not a big deal, of course. It's still basically 1 year, 7 million, but that helps a little bit, right? We're trying to really make ends meet this off season. If you take a look at if you take a look at some of the numbers, it's going to be tight, I think. So this is nice. Save a couple 100,000 on Jerome Baker. And we also got George Fant. And this was actually a big one. This was an important one because we were told that the deal was like 2 years, 14 million, I think. And that could have painted a little bit of an ugly picture here, but it looks like the cap number is going to be about 9 million, 9.1, call it. So not quite half, but a good chunk of the contract is tied up in incentives. And those incentives are not counting against the cap until he makes them. So they must be incentives that are deemed unlikely to be reached. So they don't count against the cap. So the contract in terms of base actual value is 2 years, 9.1 million, which that's a lot better than 2 years, 14 million. I'll put it to you that way. First year cap hit is 3.43 million. I estimated it was going to be around 5, so this is actually a big shot in the right direction. This helps. This makes life a lot easier. And you can also see that the dead money, if we decide to release him next offseason, is going to only be 1.85 million, so you would save about 3.8, which that may be a very realistic possibility if we get to the next offseason and Abe Lucas is doing a lot better and we want to roll forward with him, and we just feel like George Fant, while he would still be a pretty capable swing tackle, wouldn't be worth the 5.65 million that he would be making in 2025. So there it is. So this actually makes things a lot easier, although mostly the reduction in cap hit is just making up for some of the increased cap hits we've seen on some of the other players, like Noah Fant. So when you take a look at the salary cap situation as a whole right now, I'm not going to go bit by bit this time because I've done that a couple times already. But Spotrac says that if you account for every player, we have about 5 million in cap space. And they are not accounting for still Tremaine Ankrum, Artie Burns, Tyrell Dodson, Jonathan Hankins, and Kayvon Wallace. Now we know that Dodson is somewhere around 1 year, 4.2 million, but we don't know exactly how the contract breaks out, so they haven't put the number up yet. So that plus Ankrum actually would put us in the red, I think, because Ankrum is still vet min, and vet min's going to be more than 1 million. So then you add in Artie Burns, who is going to be around vet min. You're about 1 million over. Kayvon Wallace and Jonathan Hankins both probably got a little bit more than the minimum. So you add those two guys in, you're probably sitting at about just 5 million over if I had to estimate. Again, we don't have any numbers with Hankins. We don't have any numbers with Wallace. I'm guessing probably about 5 million over. And then you've got 8.4 million for the draft, and then you've got 6 million to carry into the season for practice squad purposes and injury buffer purposes. So you start doing the math and you're like, ugh, this is going to be tight. But the thing is, Spotrac, 61 total players currently on the roster. Add in 7 for the draft. Assume all the draft picks make the roster. So that's 13 guys that have to go bye-bye from this list, right? And a lot of them are going to be the minimum salary guys. Like maybe you'll save about, I don't know, 10 million getting rid of all the guys at the bottom of the roster. So that helps, but it doesn't get you all the way there. So then you have to add in guys like Daryl Taylor. Daryl Taylor might not be brought back just because we need the money. So that saves 3.1. John Radigan, we're not going to be able to bring him back on the $3 million tag. Either he goes or he goes and comes back for like 1 million, saving 2. Maybe even a guy like Mike Jackson, we just can't afford to have him right now. So if you start piecing things together, you can go like, okay, if we're 5 million over, 13 million over after the draft, and then the buffer gets us to like 20 million over, okay, we can get halfway there by cutting the guys at the bottom of the roster, which we're going to have to do anyway. And then Taylor and Radigan, that's another 5. And then at that point, you could get there if you just restructure one of your bigger contracts like Geno or a DK Metcalf. And I suspect this team doesn't want to do those things, but looking at it, they might have to. And I personally don't have any issue with restructuring those guys because I would like them to be here beyond this season. But I can totally understand that we have a brand new coaching staff in place that might not be looking at Geno as a surefire long term option here. And with his big cap hit coming next season, they want to maintain flexibility on that. Maybe the same thing with Metcalf, although I think that one's a lot more safe. You can reduce his base salary down by about 5 million. It would be actually more than that, but by like 8 million and probably get where you need to go. So I don't see Metcalf being part of some roster purge this upcoming offseason. He's a really good player, really valuable, still young. So I think you could restructure him and feel pretty safe about it. But there really isn't a ton else you can do at this point. Remember, the roster bonuses on these players have kicked in. Like Draymond's gotten his bonus, Geno's gotten his bonus, DK's gotten his bonus. A couple other guys, I think Nwosu got his bonus as well. You can't really move off those guys now. If you do, then that's a sign that you were very, very poor in your offseason planning and you weren't thinking past what was right in front of your nose. Like if you were to cut I don't know, Draymond Jones now, or trade Draymond Jones even, or move Draymond Jones in any way, I think that would be kind of making you look really, really stupid. It would make it look like you have no understanding of, future consequences whatsoever, because that's something that should have been done a month ago. But yeah, it's going to be tight. We might end up going into the season with like no trade buffer, injury buffer. Some teams do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Some teams will go into a season with just no injury buffer, and they're like, well, if somebody gets hurt, I guess we're just going to survive on practice squad call ups and hope that's good enough. But yeah, you do the math, it's certainly doable. You clear the stuff at the bottom of the roster, and then you get rid of some of the guys who are just making a little too much money who have no bonus, and you'll get there. All right, see you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think about all this, if anything. I know it's just contract stuff, but it matters. It all matters. Jerome Baker, George Fant. Still waiting for details on 5 more players: Ankrum, Burns, Dodson, Hankins, Wallace. Once we get that, we'll have a full picture and we'll kind of have an idea of exactly what the team needs to do in order to get to where they need to go. All right, I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think. And yeah, more contract stuff.